Tech Reimagined. Redefining the relationship between people and technology. Brought to you by Endava. This is Tech Reimagined.
Welcome back to the Tech Reimagined podcast on digital innovation with Mats and Sulina. In this half, we'll get to know each of our guests a little better and look back over their careers to understand how they got to where they are today. Let's start with Sulina. Can you describe a little bit about your background?
Yeah, thanks, Bradley. So I'm half Indian and half Scottish. I was born and brought up in India. I finished school in Scotland and then went to Oxford, and I studied human sciences in Oxford and then did a law conversion and bar school in London. I started working in London and have spent the last 12 years in Paris. So variously my background it's in negotiation jobs and across the length of my career, whether it's as an intellectual property litigator or as a VP of corporate development, and latterly as partnerships. And I've worked in two industries, in principle, telecoms and tech. And I moved from one role to another and one industry to another, really by a desire to change, learn something else, try new things, and also due to a lot of luck.
And Sulina, at what point did you then transition into the tech industry?
It was via a whole bunch of very lucky encounters that I made, and some decisions that I made which were trying to be more practical and adapt to the changes in my life. So telecoms to tech was really to try and move out of the M&A environment into something that was very much more predictable, because I was pregnant with twins, and the travel and intensity of the workload in M&A didn't seem very feasible. So I asked for a strategic partnership role and started to work with Amazon and Microsoft and, of course, Google and Facebook, which led me to my last two roles. But it was the opportunities of working with those companies, getting interested in their DNA and the very different approach that I saw from these companies, and the relationships I made during working with them that helped me get into tech.
And do you find some of the legal training still comes in useful from time to time?
Absolutely. It's been the core part of my whole career. It's been a sort of single thread that's led me through is negotiation. And the approach that you learn as a litigator to negotiation, problem solving, how to read a contract, how to construct arguments, I learned all of those as a lawyer, and I use them still today. And
onto your most recent role at Google, you actually joined during lockdown. What was that like?
So it's been pretty challenging. The hardest thing I find about the role joining in lockdown is the fact that we don't have the energy and we don't have the sharing of ideas in the same fluid way. Google is going to stay locked down till next spring, at least. That's the latest information. So what we're very focused on as a leadership team is to try and keep the energy, try and keep the community. The other thing I'm finding difficult is to structure my day and put routine in. When you're at home, there's almost nothing to stop you from working. There's no lunch break, there's no moments of chat, there's no end of day. And so I find that I'm working endlessly, and I'm very conscious to not try and set unhealthy routines and unhealthy examples for the rest of my team. So I think those are the two, is the having to try and create an identity for the team and a sense of my place in the team remotely, and also trying to control the working day. I don't know if you find the same.
Absolutely. And Mats, how about your background?
I'm Swedish. I live in Stockholm. I was born in Stockholm, but I've been working, a lot internationally over the last 20 years, I would say. But as my home base has always been Stockholm. I would say that I don't have a traditional career path. Maybe for a senior executive. I actually started working already at 18, leaving secondary school. And it was really, I would say, a strange situation that occurred. We don't need to go into that, but I jumped on a temporary position actually at the Swedish Postal Services. I started there, and I had 1.5 years before I was doing my military service, and I actually started working. And the reason I actually started working was I wasn't sure what I wanted my next step to be, university and next level of education. And my big interest was really sports. I was practicing every day. I was still doing a number of different sports, both football and a winter sport called bandy. That was my primary focus. So I did my military service. Later, I was a platoon leader of a platoon. So I had an officer's training for almost 2 years. I think both from the sports, but also from the military service, which at that time was mandatory in Sweden for all men. And that was really where my interest of leadership and leading teams and creating results came from. So that was really my ambition, really leadership role very early on. Then I actually I gave up the athlete's career and then I started actually studying. So I studied for 3 years in combination of with the work. And it was really finance, IT development, and strategy studies that I pursued. Then started to move also in positions. There was a very huge organization and there was a strategy team set up. So I started working with strategy at around, I was 27 years old. I started working strategy for a company that was actually 75,000 employees across Sweden. And we were doing IT consolidation and rolling out the distributed computing, I would say, to all offices across Sweden. And that was a huge transformational task on the really basic IT level. But after a couple of years there, I was offered with the 2 years, and I think Sulina said there is opportunities will present themselves, and I was offered a management position, merging 8 regions of IT departments in 2 months, and also finding offices and buying cars for the service organization was kind of on the task list, and I was set to do that in 2 months, and I jumped on that, and it worked out quite well. I did that for 3 years, and then I moved into travel in the millennium, beginning of the millennium, starting to work and there was another opportunity. I started as the head of IT operations for the Nordic group within TUI. And after 6 months, my boss or manager came and said, who was the CIO, said that I'm going to leave and I'm recommended you to take over. So after 9 months in the company, I was part of the board in the Nordic management team. And I worked from there. 4 years after that, I took over digital strategy for the business strategy of digital and started to shift the distribution in the Nordic domain of TUI. It's been, I think, that kind of way all along, that there is something that comes up. You take the risk, you take the chance, and you jump on it. And I think my later part of my career has been a CIO and leader of digital development and innovation, and it's always been about trying to lead teams and organizations to start to deliver, digital services that really brings value, both financially and customer value. But I started in the operations, as I said, and so I'm actually equally interested in those things when it comes to efficiency and uptime and really strong, robust services. So I think that combination has many times been quite good when it comes to actually bring change to the company, because I can bridge some gaps between different disciplines. I studied, more advanced strategy at the Stockholm School of Economics and the Duke University and IMD in Lausanne. really that's where I think my key interest is really how can we create value, how can we bring change in an efficient way to the business where I'm actually at the moment. And I think the core of my leader philosophy has always been, all the years, has been about coming from the sports and really thinking about how we as a team compete, how we deliver to a common goal, how different competencies and roles are working together, achieving goals and winning and losing together, if you say so. And I think I'm very much a generalist and quite, I would say, broad profile, but I'm trying to leverage, a good leadership to motivate people to drive change.
Great, thank you very much. Sulina, did you have mentors along the way, and any pieces of advice that really stuck with you?
First one I'm thinking of is Anthony Lester, Lord Lester. So he had just entered the House of Lords. I had just been sacked from Freshfields. So I'd interrupted my studies as I needed to earn some money, and I was supposed to be logging a data room of documents. It was incredibly soul-destroying, but that's no excuse. I was really rubbish and was nicely asked to leave. So I was newly sacked, and on a recommendation, Anthony gave me a trial. I worked for him for a year on 2 major bills going through Parliament, in fact. Anthony died this summer. I'm so grateful for the opportunity that I had to learn from his commitment, from his humanity, from his rigour, his argument. And I should add that he threw away the first piece of work I did for him. He redid it. He redid it, and I watched what he did, and I learned, and I did better second time round. But he was a very major part of my structuring me early on in my career. My other great piece of luck was being introduced to Tony Willoughby. So I was introduced to him by the head of the chambers I was at, where I was doing my pupillage. And Tony Willoughby had set up a niche intellectual property firm where he was breaking away from the traditions of big firms. So we had these industry-leading clients, really all the big brand names. We did very innovative work, and individually we were given masses of opportunity to stretch and try new areas. I was able to go to the European Court of Justice, the ECJ, before I was 30, which was a pretty amazing experience. But mainly we had a huge amount of fun, so it was very demanding but hugely fun. And my whole view on the work pace of energy and the engagement, the questioning of status quo, being straightforward. Tony's incredibly straightforward, very respectful, and how to give opportunity to the people in my team. That really comes from him and that experience I had there. I should also add that he also threw away the first piece of work I did for him.
There's definitely a theme going on here.
There is a theme going on, but it stops there. By then I learned.
And nowadays, when you're looking for additional advice, do you have any mentors now?
I think I've got a little bit of a gap, given some of the changes. There are a few people I talk to from time to time. Again, there are people who I've generally worked with closely and I take advice from, but it's nothing regular and formal. I was thinking about the fact that I'm ready for a mentor now. I'm ready for someone who's able to also give me some perspective on my opportunities and on my approach, and with whom I can exchange ideas freely. I am a mentor, and I take that role very seriously with a lot of pride. I would like to continue doing more. I think it's especially important. What I lacked when I was starting off was women role models and women mentors, or even bosses. And I'm very glad to see that even though there aren't enough women around, there are certainly more. It's enormously important for me to work with a young woman in organisations that I'm in, and also in other organisations.
And any more mentors?
Yes, and the important ones at the later stage of my career were Sanjeeva Ahuja and Damien Reed at Orange. So they were the CEO and EVP of the EVP of Strategy and Corporate Development, and I was having itchy feet as an intellectual property counsel at Orange and wanted to leave. They coached me, we talked about it, and they coached me into a new role as VP of Corporate Development, as I was curious about the companies and how they were structured, and I wanted to learn finance. So they sent me to business school and I took the role. Why I think that was a really important moment and why I'm very grateful to them, it was vertiginous because I was in a senior role and there was a huge amount I didn't know. But it was an incredible burst of energy and excitement having to learn this. I don't think I slept for the first few weeks. I was really petrified of making a mistake. For example, on a huge 10-year business plan. In fact, I did make a mistake. And when I realised, I went to talk to Damien about it, and what he said is, if this is the worst mistake you ever make in your career, you're a very, very lucky woman. So I'm grateful for the opportunity, and I'm grateful. I think the important thing when you have these sorts of opportunities is just hold your breath and hold your nose and jump and go for it.
That's definitely a consistent theme that we're hearing from lots of people who are coming onto the podcast. When there are very big opportunities, it's being able to take that big stride forward and see how it goes.
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
Mats, did you have any mentors along the way or any pieces of advice that really stuck with you through your career?
I have had both mentors as a part of more formal mentor programs, and I've also been acting as a mentor for mentees. But I need to agree with Sulina. It's not there I have got the best, I would say, feedback and the best kind of advice that I'm carrying with me. I worked for Johan Lundgren, who is today the CEO of EasyJet. He was the Nordic CEO for a number of years, and it's absolutely the best and greatest leader I've worked for so far. And he said one thing that I really try to work with myself and also with the people reporting to me and my organizations that I lead, is that you should always talk to the one you have concern with before escalating it to me. So talk to the one that the concern, if you have any feedback or concerns or negative experiences before starting to escalate to management. And I think that's can seem to be a very basic and small thing, but it's quite hard to get the criticism going or the trying to take care of the different kind of friction that is in a management team or in a group of leaders or in an organization by people actually addressing the people that it concern. And I think that is very important because it also links back to the thing I said about honest leadership and keeping it real. That I mentioned earlier. I think it fosters the culture, and I try really to live with that. Then I think my kids have given me actually a lot of mentoring, and they are really honest. And I have some great stories. We can't go into them today, but really I try to be open to all kinds of feedback, and it sometimes comes from the most unsuspected places.
Once you have a culture of addressing your concern with the person you're going to escalate about, does that then generate less escalation? Do you deal with it by actually speaking to the person you have issue with?
Definitely it does, but it also starts to foster some kind of internal feedback loop about, I would say, accountability within the different people themselves, to say, actually, is it actually him or her, or is it actually me? And I think we all need sometimes to take a step back and think, is it I that have a problem, or is somebody else actually causing a problem for me, and both in life but also in professional organizations. So it fosters, I would say, a good sense of cleansing unnecessary discussions or escalations.
Do you read any business books or listen to any podcasts, except for Tech Reimagined, obviously?
Obviously. Unfortunately, I don't read business books. I wish I did. I do listen to podcasts, but I don't read business books. I read a lot of newspapers. Now I make it my business to have a look at some of the newspapers from different parts of my scope, which is EMEA, Europe, Middle East and Africa. So I make sure that I have a quick look at what's going on. for the country, but also for the messaging from the newspaper.
And Matt?
Yeah, not specifically podcasts. I like the vision part. I've been watching a lot of TED Talks, I would say, because I like the format where it's quite short and it addresses a specific topic. It's not kind of all over the place. So I like it packaged, if you say so, and I like the visual piece. But that's from time to time. It's not something I do all the time. I carry one actually business book with me, which is, I think you heard me talk a lot about culture and how you actually are delivering change and innovation and great services today. And I like the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People of Stephen Covey. It's an old classic, I know, but I think the thought of accountability for yourself and your performance, and also the well-being of yourself, to be able to create value together with others. It's really appealing when you're trying to be a good leader and trying to build fast-moving organizations. Then I would say I'm really so curious every day. And also I'm more like a detective of the internet, I would say, because I learn some news, or get the news flash, and I get interested. I Google things then, and I read the Wikipedia, or I read some kind of blogs or information pages about things, and I track things and find relations between people, things, and movements. So I really, there is, if you're curious and kind of a little bit of what do you say? Not the peeping Tom, I would say, but really, it's so easy to access information and learn things about. Oh, actually, that's the way it's connected, and these people are owning this company, and that's why they are saying this. It's a lot of transparency out there if you just follow some threads. Yeah, so that I spent some time doing that.
And does your mind boggle about how everything feels like it's eventually linked to each other?
It's still a very top-driven world. When it comes to economic power, then naturally, there is a lot of relation between things in big corporations and I would say investments. So things are linked, and happen different moments, if you say so, or things that happen are usually, quite easy to find the cause of. Cause and effect, if you say so. So I think it's very interesting to see, try to find your own take on what's actually communicated more publicly. Yeah.
What do you think has changed between you starting your career and today's graduates?
Two changes jump out, and there have been many, but the two are the women at senior positions. Again, there still aren't enough. In the last job I had, there were 27 people in the leadership team and in my area, and there were 2 women. And I didn't have women role models at the beginning of their career, and I really would have liked that. The second one, I think, is the attitude of graduates. They expect and they have more control over their careers, and they're much more intentional about what they want to do, their expectations of managers, the value of their input. And I find this particularly so in tech companies. I think this makes for healthier and more respectful environments. It also allows the flow of ideas, it allows the flow of innovation. So I think it's a change, and I think it's a really positive change.
And Matt, what were the key opportunities or standout moments in your career?
I mentioned a little bit earlier about, taking on that first leadership role, really jumping on the task. Setting up an organization, trying to manage people. That are, all people were more or less older than me, and I was a very unexperienced manager, trying to get everybody to accept that I would lead the team and we would work together. And they were, 8 different local IT teams, trying to build a more service organization. And I was a terrible start, I would say. We had the lowest employee satisfaction score in the whole Swedish Post, but we managed to work together and create a very good environment nevertheless. So that was, I think, for a key moment, trying just to jump out there and say, I want to try my abilities as a leader. Then when I got the chance, I said, as joining the board in after 9 months in the travel industry of TUI Nordic, and then leading the business transformation strategy across the Nordic group for 7 years. I mean, driving from like 13% online sales to almost 70% online sales of total share of sales. That was a totally, transformation. It also meant that I needed to work with the managing directors of the sales companies, and even if they had a P&L responsibility, I need to find a way as the CIO how we can join up and share accountability for actually implementing the strategy. And in 2007, I would say, achievements or moments that I really appreciate is that I became the CIO of the year in Sweden in 2007. I was really on the results of the business transformation in TUI Nordic, and that was, of course, something I'm very proud of and a great acknowledgement. So I would say those things are the ones stand out.
What do you think has changed between you starting your career and today's graduates?
You heard that I started my career when I was 18. So I think, somebody, really, not is a mature person from secondary school coming in and starting working like I did in a big corporation. That will not happen today. It's so much tougher competition today on that kind of journey. I think since we are global today, it's totally different. Competition on having roles that are in the development path, if you say so. So there, I think the general, skill level of the people coming out to starting working in organizations are broader and deeper. And you still have to have the ability to act and convert, the knowledge that you have. Really, the competence is really about, taking that broader skill base and put it into action. And I think that is still, a journey that people need to make. So I think it's tougher, but I think some of the challenges are the same.
Excellent. And finally, what's your daily routine? Any tips that you can share with us, especially during this lockdown period?
I'm not a good example. As I say, it's difficult to control the day. There are no natural breaks that divide you from home and work. And I'm finding that my work is trickling into every part of my day. So I'm not the best example. So I want to be more intentional and I want to set a better example.
And Matt, what's your daily routine? Any tips that you can share with us? The answer is going to be bandy and golf, isn't it?
No, it's going to be, I will surprise you, Bradley. It will be drink water, meditate, exercise, eat well, and be curious. That's my tip. And that's what I'm trying to do every day. I have a fantastic wife. I have 3 kids. I have 3 dogs. So I think routines is something that we have never had. It's kind of things in motion all the time, and you need to kind of act on things happening. So that's I would say in the private. On the job, I think I try to have very short one-to-ones with my direct reports quite often, and I try to really practice management by walking around, especially if you want to build an empowered team structure, culture. You need to be visible and be as accessible as a leader, even if you have a more senior role. So that's what I'm doing in the professional place as a routine.
Thank you to Mats and Sulina for spending some time with us to reimagine the relationship between digital innovation and technology. I hope you will join us next time for another interesting discussion on the Tech Reimagined podcast. Please remember to like this podcast and hit the subscribe button.